I've always wholeheartedly liked how Simgot IEMs sound, except maybe for one set in particular. But these are something different and evidently a showcase for what Simgot has to offer. Thank you to the folk at Simgot for making this review possible by sending me this demo unit. All thoughts and opinions are my own. So let's jump straight into how this is built. In typical Simgot fashion, you get a premium unboxing experience with everything you need in the box. You get the IEMs, small, medium and large ear tips, the literature, a neat carry pouch and the cable in it. The cable is a high purity oxygen-free copper silver plated one with 0.78 mm 2-pin connectors at the end where you connect the IEMs, and the other end is terminated to a 3.5 mm jack for connecting to your phone, music player or amplifier. The cable is a standard size, but I do wish it were a little bit longer. This cable doesn't have a microphone, so your phone's mic should take over when you get calls or when you want to play any games. Moving on to the IEMs, the shell is a high precision resin 3D print and it has a metal faceplate which is cool to the touch. It does have a tiny venting port near the ring, and the housing has another venting port right next to the 0.78 mm connector which is highlighted in gold. The nozzle is an interesting one. There is no metal meshing here. It's open and has 3 ducts which I assume carry over the highs, mids and lows to you directly from the multiple drivers that are housed within the 3D printed resin enclosure. This design does help eliminate standing waves within the housing and does contribute towards how clean these sound. Comfort wise, I did think that these would be uncomfortable considering how large the housings are, but I've been able to wear these for hours at a stretch during testing and haven't had any discomfort with them. This doesn't come with just one driver, it comes with 4 separate drivers. One is a dynamic driver, one is a piezoelectric transducer, one is a large balanced armature driver, and the other is a planar magnetic driver. And they also come with 4 separate crossovers independently, which is of course quite interesting. And all these sounds, all the energy is transferred over to your ear canal and eardrum via 3 separate ducts. So this does help eliminate any standing waves within the housing of the IEM. These have a frequency response of as low as 8 Hz all the way up to 40,000 Hz and have a very easy to drive low resistance of just 7.2 ohms. On a volume front, these are relatively easy to drive, in fact, because I've been listening to these mostly at about 25% volume, and I'd say they do open out a little bit at about maybe 30 or 35%. 40% can get a little too loud for me, but it does open up quite well and it is very fun sounding here between maybe 40 and 45%. I would not recommend sitting at 50% volume and beyond over prolonged periods of time if you do intend on preserving your hearing. Now, as with all audio equipment, it does thin out at lower volumes. So down low at maybe 20-15%, you would expect it to lose a lot of roundedness. It does, but it does maintain a good amount of it as well. And one thing I did find that when I plug into my portable dongle DAC, or if I plug into my portable setup with my portable amp, it does not sound as enthusiastic as when I plug it into my desktop setup at low volume. So I've done most of my testing plugged into my desktop setup because it does sound a lot more fun with that. When it comes to its soundstage, most of it does exist within a horizontal plane in a bubble in your head, but there are times when you do get a sense of some height because a lot of elements in your music do tend to sound like they're coming from slightly above your ear, slightly higher up at about eyebrow line. And this does happen more regularly as compared to other IEMs I've been testing. And the thing is, this is very sensitive as well, depending on what kind of recording mix or even what kind of hardware you're listening to. So these are very transparent with all of the above, in other words. And it does have good left and right separation with a dead center phantom channel as well. When it comes to its imaging, it is of course quite transparent, like I mentioned, with recordings as well as with hardware. So I did notice when I plug it into my desktop setup and my desktop DAC, things do get tighter, nuances get better detailed, they are more prominent, they're easier to focus in on. These IEMs are a lot more fun to listen to when you listen to much higher end hardware. So I mean, the dongle DAC is fun. I mean, it's fine for portability. If I'm out and about and I do want to carry these IEMs with me, it is fun. But after you've heard how well they perform with higher end equipment, it's very difficult to go back. So at least whenever I've listened to these while on the go, I know that things are missing. I know that I've missed out on certain details in my music that I would have heard on my desktop setup. Now, details do tighten up when you're listening to it on a higher end setup, but the thing is, it doesn't get so tight that it starts getting shrill and wants to cut through your ear. There is a good amount of structure, there is a good amount of definition. The overall texture of what you're listening to is sort of a lot more real and a lot more affordable IEMs that I've been testing in the past. And speaking about the realness of it, I normally don't talk about timbre when I'm talking about affordable IEMs, but this actually does cross a threshold into being properly audiophile grade. So I'd say timbre wise, it's not quite 100% accurate when it comes to overall naturality or tonal quality of certain instruments and vocals, but it sure does get very close there. It's very enjoyable to listen to, especially when you listen to a lot of acoustic music. Things do come with more of a natural approach than anything in the sub 10,000 rupee category. So I'd say overall it really is a very enjoyable set of earphones to listen to, especially if you like to focus in on a lot of nuances and certain elements that your artists are performing when it comes to their music. High frequencies thankfully have a very different approach towards how they've been tuned compared to a lot more affordable IEMs. This range isn't tuned to hit the sky and back. It's tuned in a very tasteful manner as to not be aggressive and remain soft in its delivery while maintaining a good amount of crispness in its presentation. It hits all the right spots, whether you want to focus in on cymbal hits or any percussive instruments in this range. It handles decay and resonance in open-spaced recordings almost completely naturally. If you're someone who likes listening to your music for hours at a stretch, this set of IEMs will ensure you're able to enjoy this range without any fatigue. Listening to Take 5 performed by the Dave Brubeck Quartet, Joe Morello hammering away at his 20-inch Zildjian right cymbal doesn't hover around your ear like a mosquito trying to figure out what you're all about. Rather, it comes at you almost like an old friend wanting to embrace you after seeing them after years. It's soft, warm, and easy on the ear while maintaining an almost silky smooth delivery. Mid frequencies tend to have a forward approach in the upper mid region, but it does manage to maintain a roundedness in the lower mids, so vocals and instruments don't thin out. Despite this upper mid accentuation, male vocals come through with a good amount of depth, and the lower mids do maintain a good amount of energy in its delivery. Instrument and vocal separation in this range is easily distinguished, and those upper mids can get close to getting sibilant but haven't crossed the threshold that bothers me during my listening time with these. Listening to Foreigner perform I Want to Know What Love Is, the New Jersey mass choir can sometimes get lost in the back with a few IEMs, but not these. They're held up on a not so tall pedestal and come through with a good amount of detail and with that slightly wider and higher stage. It's almost as if they're in a semicircle in front of you. I found this range to be quite enjoyable with vocals and instruments when it comes to certain genres of music. Low frequencies aren't bloated, and it has a tight and upright posture in its delivery without being obnoxious. This range has an element of discipline to it. It's not trying to impress you and knows what it's capable of doing. The mid bass isn't as elevated as the sub bass, and I like this tuning because softer genres like jazz, blues, or anything acoustic tends to have a more natural presentation here. That sub bass elevation makes these IEMs potential bass enthusiast IEMs. Then again, it's not going overboard with its delivery. There's a tightness, good amount of structure and warmth in this range which makes it more than enjoyable to listen to. Listening to Justin Timberlake perform Say Something featuring Chris Stapleton, there's a sub-low rumble in this track that I wasn't expecting these IEMs to push out, but they handle this range with a confidence and composure like most audiophile grade equipment does. I find this amount of bass to be just right for most genres of music, but if you like electronic dance music and want your earwax to fall out of your ears, you might want something with a bloated response. These stay clear of that. So to sum up on a build front, I mean, it's very simple. It's not, trying to be flamboyant. It's I like the faceplate and its simplicity. There's not much going on it. It's just that little circular gold ring over there with that venting port over there. It is simple. It's not going to sort of pull any attraction toward you if you like being discreet. The cable is nice. I find the IEMs to be quite comfortable. I usually sometimes have discomfort in my left ear with some IEMs and earphones, but I haven't experienced that with this. So I do have a smaller left concha than my right, but I've not had any discomfort with this, and I've heard this for a prolonged period of time, a few times. So it's pretty comfortable. The one thing I don't like because of how nice this sounds with my desktop setup is I like plugging into my desktop. So if I do plug into that desktop amp, I have to either pull the amp closer to me or I have to sit much closer to my desk. So I do wish they did provide a longer cable, but then again, it is a standard length. I think everybody's doing this. And of course, if you do want to get a longer cable, you can always do that. On a sound front, it's a very fun sounding set of IEMs. In fact, I did go into this thinking that it would be sort of a lot of confusion because 4 separate drivers for different kind of drivers, 4 different crossovers. But then again, Simgot is very evidently just showcasing what they're capable of, because usually it's you'd see some information like this and think it would be just a circus of sound, but they've really done a terrific job about this. In fact, one thing I did mention in my chapter about sound, which I wanted to because it was a mouthful, let me just cover it here since I did miss out on this. This is the information I've got online. I hope it's accurate, but I did mention that you get the dynamic driver, which of course handles the bass. The large balanced armature driver handles the mids and some highs, and the piezoelectric transducer and planar magnetic drivers handle the highs. So the fact that they're handling a lot of this information usually just means there's going to be a lot of confusion within the IEM. But they've got these 3 sort of ducts facing away from the different drivers that are handling different frequencies, and I think because of that it sounds as clean as it does, because there are no standing waves to eliminate other sort of frequencies and resonances. So it's pretty cool that they've done something like this. It is the first set of IEMs that I've seen something like this, but I think there are other brands that have done this in the past. But of course, I think there'll be a huge price difference compared to these ones in particular, compared to the ones I did see very briefly at one event, one audiophile event. I think those were well over a lakh worth of rupees. But anyway, when it comes to the overall sound on this, the immediate thing I did when I first heard them was, well, apart from find them to be completely very enjoyable to listen to, was want to listen to them on my desktop setup. And not very many IEMs call for that. Whenever I do test things, I just usually plug into an Wi-Fi Go link and I enjoy those IEMs to the fullest. But this one was practically calling out to that equipment. It sound like it wanted more power. And the thing is, it's not about feeding it more power. Yes, it's easy to drive, but the amp I have has a lot of headroom. It is a very powerful amp. It is a Schindler 2 tube amp, and it does have a lot of headroom. And there is a huge difference between how much fun it is to listen to with this amp as compared to the dongle DAC. The low frequencies on these are good fun to listen to. It's big, it's rounded, it's got a good amount of body. It does sound large. It's not like a lot of other affordable IEMs which do try and push out the lower frequencies, and then there's that hint of bloatedness that creeps in. With this one, there's a very good amount of structure. It is sort of very well defined. There is a good amount of texture to this. The mid frequencies, I was expecting to be a very thin in the lower mids, but thankfully there is a good amount of roundedness. So a lot of vocals do sound a lot more natural than I was expecting them to. And of course the highs, they're very well defined. They things like chimes and all, you hear the tightness in its delivery. It's not just elevated high frequencies in the tuning, so high frequencies are just thrown at your ear. No, it is very finely and cleanly tuned, so it is very well detailed, very well nuanced. And in fact, these are properly a good set of audiophile grade IEMs that I've heard after a very long time, because I've been listening to a lot more affordable things that I've been reviewing. But I think after this set of IEMs, I do want to start doing a lot more properly audiophile grade, higher end equipment, because there is certainly a lot more joy you can feel out of audiophile grade stuff than the affordable stuff. So I would say these are great value for money, especially considering the kind of sound you get out of these. So speaking about the cost of these, well, let me quickly tell you about them. These do have a maximum retail price of about 14,999, but they do have a selling price of about 12,999, and this can fluctuate depending on if people are having sales and so on. But at the time of recording it does cost this much, and abroad if you do buy this, it can cost you about $149.99. And is this value for money? Well, considering a lot of the stuff I've been listening to lately is anywhere between the 2,000 to maybe 9,000 rupee price bracket, I find there to be very small increments, diminishing returns between the 2,000 to the 8,000 rupee or 9,000 rupee price segment. I mean, there's a lot of different flavors. There are different kind of elements in the IEM world when it comes to these price ranges. But just sort of bumping up to this 12,000 or 13,000 price range, at least with this specific set of IEMs, I think is a much greater return than if you were to spend up to 8,000 or 9,000 rupees. So all in all, yeah, I would definitely recommend these. I'd say they're great value for money, and I'd say they're loaded with science. They've got so much going on in them. It's amazing that Simgot has managed to do something like this, and obviously this is kind of a testament to what Simgot is capable of. The fact that they're doing this, I really do feel it's more of a showcase to show what the brand is capable of. So anyway, there you have it. That's been the SuperMix 4, and I do hope that you found this video helpful and informative, and I do hope that it helped you make some sort of purchase decision. If you would like to help support the channel, I'm sure you know exactly how to. But of course, thank you for tuning into Paul's POV for some sound advice.